Conservation easements were authorized by the IRS and the U.S. government to incentivize private landowners to engage in an easement or a contract with a land trust or some other charity in which they promise not to develop their land but to conserve it in as close to its natural state as possible. And in exchange, they would get a write-off in the amount not of the value of the land or what they paid for it, but they get a write-off that represents the money they could have made if they had developed the land to its highest and best use, is the terminology. Just like if you bought a $10 painting at a garage sale and it turned out to be worth $10 million, if you donated that to a museum or some charity, the write-off would be on the $10 million, not the $10 you paid for it. That multiplication of the value of your investment into a much larger write-off, that's the reason why this kind of investment can be a cash positive benefit for you, unlike most deductions, whereby incurring some expense, you might save some portion of that in taxes, but with this, you're actually getting a savings that exceeds your expense. So you end up with just more money in your pocket, period. Now, this definitely sounds too good to be true, and people tend to be very skeptical, but a lot of wealthy people with a lot of really good financial advisors have been using this technique for many, many years because it is one of the most generous deductions that is in our tax code. There are plenty of stories of wealthy people who buy land for their own personal outdoorsy use and then donate it to a conservation easement, and with that write-off, they actually completely negate or offset the acquisition cost through the tax savings. And in a lot of cases, they actually do develop it in the way they intended to from the very beginning, just not developing it in the ways that they promised not to. They basically are getting acreage for free and not really sacrificing anything except the resale value, which they are perfectly comfortable with because it's already paid for, and they are likely to just keep the property in the family. It sounds too good to be true, but it is true. And if the wealthy who take advantage of it, it might as well be true for you. Well, at one point you had to actually be wealthy enough to own a huge piece of land to donate and get the write-off. Now there are a lot of investment firms that are acting as syndicators. It's enabled basically any accredited investor with cash to be able to buy into one and get their share of a larger write-off without ever having to actually own the property on their own. So you buy in for a share of a property that is donated and you get your share of that write-off. For instance, like this video that's running right now, there's a developer in South Carolina that has bought a large area of land. They have two plans. They have a plan to actually build housing, and obviously that would take a lot more time, a lot more money in, but of course there's a return that would be associated with that. The second plan is, rather than doing all that development, they could just donate it as a conservation easement or donate the right to develop on it and get a write-off using the potential future value of the housing development they could have built as the basis of that write-off. So the investors get to decide how they want their money back. Do they want it as a return on the building or as a return in the form of a write-off for not building the housing development? And before you even sign any papers, you'll know exactly what property you're buying into, exactly what the write-off is going to be, exactly what your upside will be for having invested in that conservation easement. Anyone with a good income and with some cash on hand can benefit from this that used to really only be available to the wealthy. If you invested enough to get a write-off that actually is more than 50% of your taxable income, you can only use 50% of it per year, but all that write-off can roll forward for up to 15 years. So that's how it works, and it's very well supported by the U.S. government. They set up the program in 1980. Probably most of the congressmen have done this before. A lot of land developers do it. It's a very well-proven strategy. It got a little bit of bad publicity when there were people who were grossly overstating the potential profit if a piece of land were developed, and the IRS has really cracked down on, but done properly with the right partners that work with very well insured conservation easement syndicators, there's very little risk. They are real projects, real developers, and it's a way, even in the last few weeks of a tax year, to put some of your spare cash to good use and get 30% plus return on that cash investment by the time you do your tax return for the year. So be sure to continue to this site. There's a hypothetical conservation easement syndication with numbers. So hopefully that will also help you realize that no, it is not too good to be true, and it could be true for you. So please sign up so we can get in touch with you, or call the number or contact Frontier Wealth Strategies, the experts that spoke at our seminar, from the website in order to get a personalized, quick conversation and know whether or not this could be a thing that would work out for you. And I certainly hope it does. Thanks.